Welcome to the show. It's an out of the blank type of show, but I'm here with Dylan.
What's going on, man?
Dylan, I love the shirt, first of all.
Thank you.
If I had to ask a funny question or a deep question, which one would you want?
Deep.
What is life? What's it about? What is it ever? Because your show is pretty interesting because I think it's also about understanding different perspectives, which I am definitely a fan of. I think I like to hear everybody's little idea of what the world is. But how deep does that go? Like, do you want to know? Like, I like the simulation theory. I like all the conspiracy theories. I never like having one final answer. I always like to be like, it goes anywhere.
Yeah. And I think you're kind of right on with that. I think it goes anywhere. I mean, if you're asking me the question, what is life? Uh, I don't have an answer. That's kind of the point of the show the podcast that I have is to try to seek answers. I don't claim to know anything really, to be honest with you. But if I had to suggest what it is or throw a theory out there, I would think that life is about experiences, and it's about learning and growing as a spiritual being.
I like that answer. I mean, I think everyone pictures like a Dr. Manhattan type coming down and being like, you want the answers to the universe? And everyone's like, yes. And I'm like, I don't know if you would want to know what that is. Like, as a person, for me, I know like I definitely times like most people probably feel lost. And it's just this concept of like, if somebody could give you the exact thing that you were destined in life to be, rather than you finding it out later, would you want that answer? Because then that feels like it cuts to the end of the race. It's really like you're just skipping over lines.
Yeah, I think you're right on with that too. I think that's part of the journey and part of the process, right? Is for us to find out, what our purpose is, or to seek answers to what, this life, give our life meaning, right? I don't think there's, necessarily one exact answer either, right? I mean, it could be a multiple of things that, you could do or experience, or that you could potentially be, right? I don't think like you come into this world as, I'm going to be a podcaster or whatever, I'm going to be a pro athlete or a musician. I mean, possibly, but I think that it's up to us to seek that out and figure it out for ourselves, right?
Kind of like a stone, like a raw stone, and then you have to use a hammer and chisel to be able to figure out what you want to finish that piece to be, towards the end and everything, which is really crazy because if you look at like 1950, and then you're thinking of like, let's take a time travel experience back to 1950. Those people in a million years would have never thought that, like, just in 2021 now, that they're coming out with information about aliens. They're all this like that just throws a monkey wrench into anything that they were doing. Like, it was just like, that's why I'm like, I have no final answers on anything. If the earth is flat, I've been in a 3-hour podcast where a guy was telling me the earth is flat, and I'm like, God, his points, like, there's a lot of
Yeah.
his points make sense. And I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, there is some points to a lot of that stuff. It makes you think and wonder, and that's what I always say. I always tell my listeners, question everything, you know, and I think you should, because I think some of the stuff that we've been told and fed and taught is not necessarily accurate. Not saying that it's untrue, but I think there's a lot of gray area. I think humans have a way of wanting to put something in a box. This is a UFO, so there's an alien on the ship. It's a nuts and bolts kind of thing. I don't necessarily know if that's always the case, or if it's always the same thing. You know what I mean? Because like I just think that there's a lot of gray area to life, and we always want to be, you're either on this side or that side.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that life really works that way.
Do you have any things in your head you would say that would probably be a question that you have? Like, I have one, like, what's deja vu? Why do I experience that? Why do kids experience it more? But then like at some point in your life you somehow lose it. But I experience, like, I'm an insomniac. So when I sleep, I'll sleep 10, 20 minutes, but it feels like 10 years. And that's when I dream. And these dreams are so intense. Like, I found a dead body through a dream before. Like, some guy got killed, or was they found him in a gutter, and I just had this dream. Like, my mom was like, I was explaining it to her, and she was like, did he look like this? And showed me a picture. And I was like, that's the guy. And she's like, where did you see this? And it's been known on like my mom's side of the family to be able to do some paranormal stuff that we can't explain. Like, my grandma could see ghosts before she passed. And it was like this whole, like, I'm not that type of guy that's a believer into it, but when I physically experienced it, I was like, that can't be out of the realm of possibilities. I mean, you see a lot what's on TV, David Copperfield flicking a spoon up in the air and be like, where did the spoon go? But to think that there isn't some type of ability that some people have, I think maybe 100, 200 years from now, there's going to be an evolution where we're going to start seeing that more people that have a certain gift or have something. I believe, from talking to so many like psychic people, it lies dormant inside of us all. That doesn't sound too far off. I mean, people were freaking out about 5G giving their kid like a third eye or something like that. I'm like, what's to stop like all this technology we're constantly putting up to our heads might have an influence on, amplifying something that lies dormant in there. I mean, the humankind in the past 200,000 years, nobody can explain that vast evolution. There's just no answers. Why did this species evolve faster than every other species? And it's like, aliens? Fuck, I don't know, man. I'm curious. I'm like, I'm pointing everywhere, every single rabbit hole or conspiracy theory I'm diving down. I'm like, I'm not out of the realm of interpretation when it comes to, I think it could be anything.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And as far as, psychic ability, I wasn't really a believer in that prior to starting my show. Well, actually, prior to even that, like I had some things happen to me in my life, and then I seeked out some psychic mediums, and I actually started to become spiritual and learn a lot about, with interviewing psychics and that kind of thing. And I think there is something to it. I think you're right. Not always, maybe not everybody, but I think maybe there is something that lies dormant in each of us. And we are quite different than, everything else that's on the planet. I actually had a discussion with a guy who's like a UFO expert. I haven't released the episode yet, but he was saying that, we potentially could have been put here by aliens, or even possibly that if we weren't put here, they've at least manipulated our DNA in such a way that like we're so much different than everything else on Earth. We don't really fit in, right? I mean,
That's
we
what I'm
kind of,
saying.
yeah. I mean, we don't fit in. Like, I mean, as far as like the cycle, the I don't know which I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, but like the um
Evolutionary chain.
yeah, we don't really fit in. I mean, because I mean everything kind of has a flow to it, right? This thing takes out that thing, but none of it's usually like harmful to the environment or the world. And like everything that it seems like that humans do here on Earth, like we're so destructive. We're just so out of place here. We just everything we do, and like we don't really fit in. We have to wear clothes. We have to stay warm. We have to, it's either too hot or too cold. I don't know. It's just really weird.
Well, I think that also is probably a factor of conditioning too. I mean, if you got to think about like the Spartan era, they were walking around in loincloths, they weren't cold at all, even when it was snowing out. But now we've just been so comfortable. I talk about when you build up these walls that you consider your safe, your shelter, they've closed you off from a lot of necessities. Like if I ask, a kid like, hey, go and kill me a bear, kid's not going to know how to kill a bear. But back in the day, that's how they did to survive. It was simple things like that. But my theory on the aliens is I believe that bunch of aliens were sitting in like a room, had a little bit of like an organism in a test tube, and they just looked at 4 different planets and were like, we're going to drop each of the same organism on each planet and let's see what happens. And then we're that 4th planet. We somehow perfect. And I mean, we're just far enough from the sun to keep us warm and sustain our type of life. And then
Right.
water, perfect. I'm like, there's probably 3 other planets out there that the whole entire time our species was evolving, they failed out somewhere along the line. And the aliens are up there now, like, man, they made it this fucking far. They made it. It's been 200,000 years or so. They're fucking still, I mean, cranking out stuff. Yeah. I mean, they're destroying their planet. Should we let them go to extinction, or should we just start showing our presence so we can save them? Because I always think like everyone's afraid of Terminators or this type of stuff. I'm like, we stopped working on artificial AIs when it comes to building like robots to be able to be our servants. And then we started using robot technology inside of our bodies to make our own lives easier, which goes down a really weird rabbit hole, but it was all in the fear of Terminators. That was the whole giant thing, was that robots would take us over. So I start looking at it like maybe the aliens, if they're going to show themselves, if the COVID bill says all this stuff about aliens now admitting that it's real, I'm like, maybe they're looking at us like, yo, we created you and we don't want you to kill yourselves. Like, I can't sit by and we fucking invested. It's like when you have a kid, if you have a kid and it dies at the age of 30 or something, God forbid, but you're like, that's 30 years down the fucking drain, 30 years of cherished memories. And the aliens are like, that's 200,000 years of fucking work. And it's all gone because they had a TikTok and it all went downhill from there. That's what they're thinking.
Yeah, true. Right on, man. Right on. And I think, and I'm with you. Like, I don't think they're here to hurt us, or they would want to hurt us. And I think a lot of people have that fear, like, you know, the aliens are going to come and take over the world. I don't think so, man. I mean, if they're a million years or more advanced up the evolutionary scale, like, they're on a whole different spiritual plane than we are. So they're, I mean, they're probably so enlightened. It's, you know, they probably want to help rather than, you know, be harmful, I would think.
Yeah. Which would you probably say is like the biggest BS when it comes to maybe a theory out there? Like, I'll give you one straight up right now. Somebody told me dinosaurs weren't real. And I've talked to plenty of paleontologists. So I'm like, I don't know. But then he convinced me towards the end. Eventually I was like, fuck, you might be right. Cause he was like, imagine if they just, it's like the moon landing. They just showed you what they wanted you to see. And you don't know if the earth isn't flat or not. And I'm like, oh God.
Yeah, it's an interesting conspiracy theory, the whole moon landing thing, and it makes you question things. If I had to say one thing, hopefully it doesn't get you removed, but I would say COVID-19.
You think COVID's fake?
No, I
Oh,
don't. I think it's real,
yeah.
but I think it's just so
Hype.
far
It's hyped up way too much.
so far. There's so many agendas that they're pushing behind a lot of the things that are going on. But yeah, no, I don't think it's fake.
I don't
I
think
don't
you're
think
alone in that train of thought though, because like I think when it initially started happening, when like the lockdowns first started happening, they were talking like it was, and it was right after like Endgame came out. It was talking about like a fucking Thanos snap, and I was like, yo, we're about to lose half the fucking people. But then like
right.
the biggest question was my town put a lockdown that you had to stay in your house for 2 weeks. Like you couldn't, all places were going to close for only 2 weeks. And I was like, but once you create that goal line, you never give it up. And then like I think people are questioning more now because like after you get the vaccine, they're talking about a third wave that's not going to, the vaccine is not going to protect you from. The people are like, you know, what the fuck are we getting this shot for if you're talking about this isn't going to do anything? We're going to wear masks for the rest of our lives. I'm like, what the
Well, that's the problem I have with the vaccination is if it's a 99.47% you know, fatality rate, you know, survival rate, that's the percentage of, you know, the average person survives this COVID. I mean, to me, like, it's safer to just live with it and catch COVID than it is to take a vaccination that I don't know what the hell's in it. I don't know what, you know, and I really should probably be talking about it because I actually got one of my episodes deplatformed for talking about what we're talking about right now.
off
On
YouTube or off what?
just YouTube. As far as Spotify and, you know, Apple and that, they didn't mess with it, but just YouTube. They took my video down.
Yeah, I started getting very questionable when YouTube added a check stage when you're uploading your YouTube videos now. It says it has to go through a verified check. I'm like, I hope I haven't even checked if any of mine have gotten removed. I post it every day, so I'm like, I don't. But I've said some crazy shit. I know for a fact. I called Mr. Rogers is probably a secret freak. Like he probably did something with kids or something like that. But everyone's like, no, he didn't. And I'm like, that fucking let me just do my thing, and then you fucking.
Right, right. I mean, and you know, and I don't know. I know that, you know, I didn't think I would get banned. I mean, I'm really small time when it comes to my show, but I know the guests that I had on, I know they're watching her pretty, pretty intensely. So I don't know if it was her that kind of drew the attention to my episode, but it's disturbing that we can't even just discuss things in a way that's, you know, and I didn't say nothing negative or, you know, harmful as far as, I think what do they word it as? Medical misinformation is why they took it down. But I mean, we weren't really talking medical anything. We're just kind of having a discussion like we're having right now with how I don't really buy into a lot of the hype of, you know, what they're doing and what they're pushing.
if you ask me at this moment in my life what I think reality is or what I think this life is, honestly, I think it was something that at one point we thought we had control and then it's now lost. Like there is obviously something like Illuminati style. And I know that people are like, that's a conspiracy. I'm like, but if you look through our history, like I think this lockdown was a great sign that we're not that control of our own destiny like we like to think we are. There's a bigger force. Like I always consider like there's Elon Musk, right? He's a smart guy. There's probably a dude in the system that creates these little potholes, creates these little things that go in our way. Oh, I got an electric bill that just came in. They raised the price of my cable. There's some dude that's like, I'm going to keep all these people from questioning and I'm going to have them more focused on this right in front of them. But there's a dude working the strings, man. There's got to be someone advanced doing that shit. I mean, so many people I talk to on a daily basis where I'm just like, where's your common sense? Like, not through the podcast, just on the street. I'm like, you just fucking walked out in the middle of traffic without looking both ways. I'm like, if I'm thinking this way about this person, then there's someone thinking that way about me. Then there's someone thinking that way about that. And it's just a chain where at the top, it's some fucking Darth Sidious type character with puppet strings, like work my minions, work.
Right. Right. I mean, it's plausible, man. I mean, there's a lot of theories out there, about the Rothschilds and the Gates and the Build Back Better. I don't know if you heard about that, and the idea of they want to tear the economy down and rebuild it in a different way. That's it's interesting, man. It's interesting. Scary.
I'm very, very nervous. I think my biggest hope for why aliens exist was that like we would all come together and go against them. Cause like in fear that even that we'd even have a chance to stop aliens if they come down here. But it's like that would just unite a bunch of people because I think for so long it was drilled into our heads the idea of world peace. And then I'm like, it's impossible. We need conflict. You need to be fighting with somebody on fucking Twitter. You need to be doing something or you're not happy because if you're not checking your phone, like, did this motherfucker talking shit on me like every 30 seconds? I'm like, you need that in your life. But people go a little bit too far with it. And that's where I get a little bit scared because my thoughts are I'm a very empathetic person. And when I see like a kid that kills himself because someone's talking shit on him online, I'm like, fuck, like, what are we doing? Can we attack the people that have billions of dollars that it's not even going to bother them? Like, let's talk about Blasio. His fucking real name is Warren Wilhelm. Why are you going by Bill de Blasio? What the fuck? Like that's like Bernie Madoff. That's Armie Hammer. The dude wants to eat his girlfriend's ribs. And his grandfather started a detergent company called Arm & Hammer. Can we fucking talk about that? Like there's some people up there that are doing some really sketchy shit. And instead of fighting with your fucking neighbor because he likes Jif peanut butter or something like that, I'm like, let's tackle this guy. Why does this person going under an alias and we're not questioning it at all?
Yeah, that's interesting. And you're talking about disturbing shit that people do. You're familiar with Pizzagate at all?
Yes.
And I mean, I don't know if any of this is true. I really hate this. I sound like a damn conspiracy theorist.
That's programming though. That's what they did. They did the same
Yeah.
shit with Alex Jones. Whenever someone mentions Alex Jones, everyone goes, "Oh, this fucking guy." And I'm like,
Yeah.
because that's what the news did. I pointed this out yesterday, and I don't mean to cut you off, but I was watching CNN and it said a black man was killed or shot. And I was like, why did you have to include the detail? And some people are like, it's so they know what's going on. So they know. I'm like, but it should just be a person was shot. Like, what the fuck? We're all human beings. We're all fucking living on this earth together, no matter your color or gender, but they make that explicit detail. And here's a great example. The Uber driver that was killed in CNN said an accident. Everyone's like, what the fuck did you just say? I'm like, the words that they say, it's going to add more or take away effect to it. And that's what that's what they did with Alex Jones, with conspiracy theories, anything. And I'm like, if you look really into it, a lot of the shit that's conspiracy theory, they did it in the past. So there's evidence that they're fucking probably still doing it today.
Well, and you had mentioned that a black man was shot, and how they label things. And, a lot of people would say that's in order to keep us not united, right? That it is to separate us, put people in a box, gay, straight, lesbian, black, white, Asian, Democrat, Republican. Like, I mean, it's to create divisions and separation so that people don't unite. That people are easier to control when they're separated.
And it's who was it? Abraham Lincoln that said, the house divided cannot stand. I mean, we two things the government, and I've been talking about for years now, I think since the start of this thing. The two things the government's afraid of is religion and when the people come together. But now you're seeing religion, be torn apart, always on trial now by fire. And I predicted that last year when I was talking to a rabbi and he was like, I don't believe you. Then a fucking week later, a couple priests get arrested in the Vatican. I'm like, it's goalposting. They're going to keep pushing and pushing and pushing and seeing how far they go. And if you can make people live in fear rather than live with love, it's 1,000 times easier to say something and they'll follow your rules because you're scaring the shit out of people. And I think now when we're seeing pushback with cancel culture and everything is because people are like, I don't want to live in fucking fear anymore. I'm tired of it. I can't go out into the world without being miserable or being scared I might say something. It's so damn difficult because I feel like it's clouding the true answer of why we're here. Why are we all, we're living on a giant fucking floating rock through space, but somehow there's magically bills that are controlling your everyday life. And for you to even live a life, you have to make sure you play by their fucking rules. I'm like, who made the rules? The founding fathers? Who? Like, just
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're right. The whole monetary system, the whole way that society is structured is a controlling aspect if you really stop and think about it. I mean, we're enslaved to have to go to work and, make money in order to pay for what? To pay, the light bill, the house bill,
more
my car
gems in Dragon
payment.
City. I mean, that's what I'm
Yeah.
spending it on.
Yeah. It's interesting.
It,
It's
it
interesting.
it makes it a little bit hard because I think, especially if you Google anything now, like especially like if you Google list of academic programs, you're gonna have all these basic academic programs we all know about: space, astronomy, astrology, whatever, and the list goes on. But now there's so many. When you click on one, there's 1,000 other that are added into it, and it's like different classes, different specifications that just have a slight little difference of a detail. And I'm like, this is why people are so like wanting to be unique, because forever we told them that they were this special thing and didn't realize that the whole system of life right now has been to make you into a 9 to 5, to make you into a programmed factory worker. And people are noticing that, but they're like, but then I might be a factory worker, but I have this red stripe in my hair, and that makes me a different category of a person. I'm like, oh, it's so backwards how everybody told you could be this special thing. And then the world is telling you, no, you're not. You're going to get a job and you're going to pay your fucking bills. I'm like, it kills creativity. There's nobody that wants to go and do a bunch of stuff. We all have this stuff that's just inside of us waiting to be opened up like a fucking flower, but nobody wants to pursue it because it's like, well, I got to pay my electric bill. Well, I got to pay my gas bill. Well, I got to make sure I have enough money to feed my kids. And it's like, what's that's not a life to live. That's not a happy one. That's a life of questioning. That's a life of people that are going to be conspiracy theorists. That's why they're in 2021. There's been more mass shootings, like 100 and something already, and we're only in fucking the end of going into fucking April. Like, that's very fucking scary, man. That's people that are suppressed. That are people that are upset. That's a cry for fucking help.
Yeah. It's it's fucked up, man. It's fucked up. I mean, it goes deep. I mean, you can look back and I mean, there's just so many different angles you could look at it from too. It makes you question, like I said, just question everything. I mean,
I
I
think we
don't
need
know.
to be picking back old style projects that we used to work on, like Project Hero, with Men Who Stare at Goats, that movie was based on and stuff like that. Russia just started doing psychological research to make, oh no, was it China? They started making Spartan warriors. They're going back into that research thing again. And I'm like, fucking, there's something in our mind. I don't think we should be enhancing it with technology like the Neuralink. That's a no-no. But I
Right.
think there's something there that on 100, 200 years from now, we're going to be able to tap into super mutant abilities when it comes to like, I can start communicating with you through like a quick thought. I could hear one word out of like months of trying or something like that. I'm like, I feel like that's there because we're learning more and more about the human brain. I mean, when you came on, reality theory to me could be, are we living in a simulation, or is it the old psychological saying of it's not your environment that chooses your decisions, it's something you've wanted to do? And I'm like, man, the mind is
Well,
it's weird how people think.
it's definitely, I think it's definitely a simulation to a degree,
Yeah.
no matter what. Because if we're all energy beings, right? We're all energy is our natural form. Then obviously this is not the natural state of who we are or what we are. So, and in some respects, it's a simulation. Now, who created the simulation? Are we inside a damn computer, or are we like an alien, project, or is it just something that is created through a collective consciousness, I guess you would say, that we were able to create and kind of agree upon this reality so we could come here and have experiences. Uh, who knows? But I think there's definitely a lot of stuff that's not at the surface of our reality that we don't understand.
I think that might be psychologically built up by our minds to try and hide that it's a simulation, just because in fear that we might not be able to handle the shock to our system if we found out it did. Everybody I've talked to who's taken psychedelics and experienced the world unraveling from itself and being able to see the bare bones of like reality, they talk about like they're changed people, like everything that their mind built up, their whole house, just all the walls start to melt and they feel like they're sinking into the couch. It's like taking you back to your base roots. Like, this is how we fucking started. And now everything, it's like eventually you get used to your refrigerator humming. You don't really notice it anymore. Maybe that's with a lot of stuff that's going on around us, is like we're just blocking things out now. We're getting used to it. We're droning it out. So we're not paying attention to excruciating detail. So many people, if you ask, like, hey, what was the wind like this morning? And you're like, what? It's like, what was the wind like? What did it smell like? And you're like, I don't fucking know. I wasn't paying attention. I was rushing to work. It's like, that's how it starts. You slowly
Right.
forget the greatest aspect of things, which is stepping outside of your house and just being able to smell the fucking air.
Yeah, that's true. But I think too that, we're kind of built that way in a way so that we can kind of, focus on things. Cause remember, I mean, even as human beings, like we can't perceive everything that's going on around us. Like our senses don't interpret everything that's around us. Right. What do they say? Like 96% of what's made up, scientists think of what's made up like in our reality, like we can't interpret or understand. Like, we only see it a certain light spectrum, we only hear certain frequencies.
Yeah.
There's a lot more that we don't sense going on around us than we have no clue.
Yeah. It's kind of like we were saying, we're all energies on this earth. There's the global brain theory that, like, if you look up from space, that like looking down on earth, if you had everybody's brain waves and everything connected, it would be like one giant brain. And I'm like, same thing with psychic abilities. Who's to say they're not on a different frequency? Like, there's frequency 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Frequency 3 is, if my cell phone that's over here is sending a signal up to a satellite right now that I can't fucking perceive. I could stick my hand through it. It doesn't do anything.
Right.
There's something else out there. There's people that can see sounds. They can see physical sound, like reverberations, all the movements and stuff that our brains, most people cannot see. There's people with extraordinary gifts. And I'm like, I think we're slowly like figuring this thing out, but we keep shooting ourselves in the foot and going down the wrong rabbit hole rather than trying to find, astral projection, for instance. Imagine we're in a simulation and the simulation can create a fucking simulation in that simulation. And it just keeps going and going and going. It's like when you hold a mirror up to another mirror and you can see yourself, and then it just goes down a long fucking line of views, just holding the same
Well,
fucking thing.
and maybe they're all different, slightly different timelines too, right?
Yes. I talk about it.
which
It gets
that
harder to be a parent when you ground your kid, telling them they can't leave their room. And then that kid goes to dimension B. He's like, you didn't ground me in dimension B. And you're like, motherfucker. Like,
it's true, man. I mean, it's strange. It's definitely strange.
what do
I
you
don't know.
think
Then
about it though?
well, I mean, I definitely believe that, that we have a spiritual side of us that's, I don't necessarily know if it goes anywhere, because I kind of on the thought of, there is no space, there is no time, that, we're all just thought and energy, and that this is all just a simulation, and that we're here for experiences to grow the collective consciousness, to learn, to experience things. And we're all kind of one and the same, everything, trees, the people, the cats, dogs, birds, uh, anything that has a consciousness is part of the whole collective consciousness, if you will. And I think we reincarnate. I think there's a lot of evidence that suggests that, kids that have come back that have been able to talk about past lives, past life regressions, another interesting thing that, people do. So I do think that we live multiple lifetimes, and I think we're going to continue to do that. Now, what reason we're doing that for, I don't know. I don't know if it's just to become more enlightened and then, do something else, or if it's just to continue to forever eternally learn about things. Because one thing I think is the reason we're here is because in energy form, we're unable to, they say it's a lot of love, right? There's a lot of love and a lot of light and a lot of just feeling there, but you don't feel the sense of loss like you do here on earth. You don't get that experience of, losing somebody close to you. You don't get that experience of pain. You don't get that experience of, since you're eternal, you don't get that experience of knowing that there's an end, knowing that there's that there's the potential for it just to all be over in a split second. And you get that kind of experience here on earth.
Imagine this is going to be a crazy little, like, it might even be a movie. I guarantee you, I'll say it and then you'll be like, that's that movie. And I'm like, oh, fuck, everything I think of is already created. But imagine if you die in this life and then you wake up in an alternate reality and you just wake up and it was just a dream, but it felt like forever, much like how my sleeps feel like years. That's how they like our mind creates a picture when it shuts off for our body to regenerate. That is the craziest fucking thing. I talk about it's like multiple doorways. You're trying to find a doorway to slip into. It's your dream. It's why it's so hard to have the same one over and over and over again and notice that you're in one. Like this simulation. Imagine you die in this and then you just wake up and as another person, like, hey man, get ready for school. You've been sleeping like 2 days. And it's like, what? I was a whole nother person. I heard my cousin's story about taking salvia. He talked about like he was gone maybe 10 minutes when he smoked it. But in his mind, he lived 60 years as this Asian man that had grandkids, and he had a heart attack in his living room in front of his grandkids as his grandkids were holding his hand. And you can Google salvia experiences. There's tons just like that.
It's interesting. That makes me wonder if he had a experience in a different place and time, or was he like tapping into a past life that he had lived at some point here in this timeline?
You you I say there's thousands. If you look up, there's a dude that spent 20 years as paint on a fucking barn. Talked about his son that would have a tennis ball, or not his son, the farmer's son would throw a tennis ball and hit the barn, and he would feel it just tapping him, tapping him. And he talked about it felt like he was getting old because the paint would start to wither off. And I'm like, 20 fucking years. But he was like, I was only gone like 10 minutes. That's what the drug do. Like time, when you say time isn't a thing, it isn't. We constructed it. It's not, we just used it because the sun was in the sky. We're going to call this day. Moon comes out, it's night. Everyone considers it like time is like law. Time, no, it's not. There's the ultimate frequency, how you pass space and time. These are all things we have gave descriptions to better understand where the fuck we are. It's a fucking label. That's what it is.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I think from a biological sense, there's time, right? But like you said, it's not really real. It's not. It's interesting, and it makes you wonder, what the hell is going on, and if we do come back, I mean, do we come back in this particular timeline, or is it a whole different, is it a whole different thing, a whole different place and time where maybe the previous life that we lived didn't even exist, or maybe things are different. Maybe there is no COVID-19. Maybe there is no, maybe they're all, I don't know. It's just very strange. And from what I understand too, at least talking to like psychic mediums and people that talk about that they can astral travel or they visited the Akasha records and stuff like that, you may even be able to carnate into something that's not necessarily in our future timeline. Like you can actually incarnate into something that's like in the past, which is strange to me.
Oh, because that's like the A theory, or no, that's not the A theory. That would be the B theory of time, right? It's the one that the past exists and also the present exists, but the future doesn't exist. Like the war right now, as we're talking, the War of 1812 is happening in another parallel universe or something. And I'm like, man, that's not far off, man. I saw Interstellar, fucked me up for 2 weeks. I was like, what is real? What? Like I would sit there and like imagine that look you get when it feels like somebody's watching you, and you're like, what the fuck? Like is somebody watching me? Is there a ghost? What's going on?
Yeah, yeah, it's a good point, and it makes you wonder. What I try to do is because I want to know. I kind of want to know. I mean, obviously, I'm probably never gonna know until maybe you know I move on from this physical plane that I'm currently in. But I mean, that's kind of what my show is, right? I'm trying to build up evidence. I'm trying to interview people that have had experiences, and I'm comparing notes and I'm comparing stories. But the strange thing is, and I will say this, the strange thing is, typically when I talk to a psychic medium, somebody who's had a near-death experience, somebody who's maybe that does past life regression work, or it all kind of lines up the same, which is odd to me. Like usually there's a reincarnation element, there's a life review element, like when people die, there's it's so I think maybe I'm onto something. I don't know. And I think a lot of people are onto something, but I mean I think that it all kind of lines up. And I think also the prehistoric humans, the ancient civilizations that we had, I think they had a better understanding of the spiritual side of who we were than we currently have today, which is a shame.
Yeah, I look at like I think everybody's got a same piece or a different piece to the same puzzle. Like every religion, everything has like the same subtle notes of the same stuff, just slight differences and slight different interpretations of it too. It's much like comic books. There's multiple comic book universes. Wolverine's alive in one comic, then he's dead in another. And I'm like, no, 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 hold on. Well, it's not like Marvel movies. They don't just go and go and go, and it's like a timeline. This is like there is no timeline. There's a timeline for when we start another, but they talk about alternate timelines, alternate dimensions, and stuff like that. I'm like, man, who's to say that there's not a same other dimension that's going backwards in time? Like we're born as elderly people and then we slowly become younger and younger until we're right off this earth. And I'm like, it's like we say, when it feels like ghosts are watching me. Everyone always says, I think it's my grandfather. I think it's this. I think it's that. How do you know if it's your family? How do you know if it's not on your next life saying, we're getting close to going on to that next body. We're getting close. All your past souls that are just watching over you like, hey, man, you're not fucking doing why we got reincarnated in the first place. People talk about reincarnation as being a trial to find yourself. And you keep going and going and going until you figure out what that is. It's then go into a different reincarnation theory. That's you're here and then you're not. And then you're in another life to experience another life. You're meant to get values of information everywhere. I'm like, fuck. Why would you want an answer when you have all these different realms of interpretation? Why would you want a clear, definitive thing that there is nothing when you die? That sounds awful.
Yeah, I definitely don't think that's the case though.
What?
At
That
least
there's
in my,
nothing?
yeah, I don't buy that for one bit. I mean, there's just too much evidence that suggests that we exist beyond this. Just way too much. I mean, just do a little looking, but I mean, it's interesting. You talk about the comic book timelines and how things change. It makes you wonder, man. These writers, that come up with this stuff. I mean, it's almost as if they've got like a greater knowledge, like they're tapping into something that's beyond like, you know, just the average human being just sitting there thinking about stuff. Like it's almost as if they're tapping onto something that they've known previously, or it's coming from direct from source or something like that. And I see that a lot with people that have come back from the dead, like near death experiences, who that you talk to them, you have a conversation with them, and they're on a whole different spiritual level, and they're so much more enlightened than like the average person. It's interesting. It's like something like they've been touched by something, or that they've changed in some way, and they've got this greater knowledge.
It's kind of like the Animus, like in Assassin's Creed. Like you're just one day sitting there, and then somehow that DNA, that whatever that genome that gets crossed from the past life to this life, whatever that one synapse just unlocks, and then it's like, whoa! Like you ever just sit and then you just have this random memory for something. You could smell something and just get triggered to it, and you're like, I totally forgot about that when I was like 4, or it just goes down this rabbit hole. Maybe that's what's within our heads. I mean, if they can take our DNA and they can put it into a system, and they can look at everything from deep far thousands of years down our bloodline or whatever that is somehow coded in there, like scratched in the surface. Who's to say that you can't unlock memories from something that might have been passed down to you or something like that? I know that gets very, very strange, and it gets into like voodoo magic style shit, but
No,
I'm like, it's crazy.
I think there is something to that though, right? Recently, like with the DNA, that we can't pass like experiences down through DNA
Yeah.
slightly.
I mean, I can see it when it comes to like where you're from. Like I know I'm like part Jewish. Somewhere down the bloodline, there's an Ashkenazi Jew or something in there, and I'm like, okay, well, that's fucking. I'm 2%. I don't know what. I wish I could be able to tap into that and figure out what those memories were like. That'd be the best.
Right.
I would do the Neuralink if it could do that.
And that would be some Assassin's Creed type stuff. That'd be pretty dope.
How do we not have that technology already? I would think that would be like, we're so focused on going to Mars and stuff, which I think is amazing. But even you and me both know Mars was only trending for a day. And then it was fucking something else like shrimp tails and cinnamon toast crunch. Like it wasn't a big thing like back in the day when we landed on the moon, which, if you want my opinion, I think the video is fake. I think we landed there a little bit later than we said we did, because it was like propaganda. We were in a space race,
Yeah.
so we were like, we don't want them fucking winning.
Right. I could see that. I mean, they make some good points about it, maybe possibly being in a studio type deal
Yeah.
with some of that conspiracy stuff when you're talking about on the moon. But
Buzz
I mean,
Aldrin talked a lot of shit, and all of it came true. So I'm like, I don't know.
right. I think the Mars thing is cool, but I mean, if we're talking about wanting to travel to, um, another Earth-like planet, or to spread our civilization off of the planet Earth, I think the way we're going about doing it right now, maybe technically we can't, because we're not that advanced. Technology is not that advanced, but I don't think you get in your spaceship and you fly from point A to point B. If we, I think there's got to be a different way that they're traveling, if they're from a different universe or a different place in the solar system. Wouldn't you agree? I mean, they've got to be able to somehow bend space time and travel that way, because it would just take too damn long.
It's kind of like, did you hear about that color ultra black that was just straight? Looked like when the cartoons where they spray paint a black hole in the wall and you could like jump through it. They created a color that totally knocks out the dimensions on shapes. Like you could spray, my hand, and my hand would look flat. My hand would just look straight, like there's nothing else there, like you're looking at a photo, like there's no other side to it, because it was just the purest color. I was like, there's got to be, like, if we're talking about aliens, the sky is falling type shit, like hitting that, like, what I had a buddy of mine talk about seeing aliens before. He said that there had been something in the sky that looked like 3 white dots in a triangle, and he goes, but you would move out of the way and it would stay the same, but you would look like you could see the other side of it without it, like. And I'm like, 2 dimensions, like a 2D scroller or Mario, to think that a being that can travel space and time could be able to change their dimension. It's kind of like the show The Orville with Seth MacFarlane, where they turn the ship into 2-dimensional space and they fucking are flat. You know, like, hey man, who's to say that's not a thing? And they're just watching us from above, dude. I have no freaking clue. And I think all these questions, people go, that's crazy talk. It's interesting talk. Think about it. Like, if you really dive down to it, a sunflower, for instance, is all symmetrical shapes. If you really look at it, it's all symmetrical things. There's certain key things in nature that are all symmetrical, all perfect. Honeycombs. What the
Yeah, honeycomb. I was just gonna say. Yeah.
how is this there's it's not just, oh, they're very intelligent, or oh, it's unexplainable. No, it can be explained, but what is that? What interpretation, what perspective?
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, that's interesting, man. And I don't know. I'm kind of lost for words. I mean,
Would you
yeah,
want
I
to
mean,
find out aliens are real if aliens were real?
uh, I I believe they're real. Yeah, I would love to meet them someday, even if I could.
You think
As
they'd
long
be
as I wasn't
friendly?
getting like anally probed or something,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
you know.
I saw
Um,
Mars Attacks and I was like, I hope it's not the yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think they could offer a lot of good. So this guy that I interviewed, he's an expert. He's like studied since 1986. He's been studying UFOs. He's part of the MUFON, and he's got like 5,000 or some documented cases of stuff that he's investigated. And he's got over, I think he said 500 cases that he has in his files of where people were abducted and were healed from, various things like cancer, diabetes, stuff like that. So, I mean, yeah, I think it'd be great to meet them because, I mean, I think they have technology that could really help advance the human race and help us in a lot of different ways. They probably have some type of free energy technology too, I'm sure.
Do you think they would want to share their technology in fear that we might use it against them or destroy ourselves?
That's a good point. And it depends on their motives, I suppose. I mean, if they're here to, play, to rescue humanity, then maybe. But if they're just here to observe and see what we do, then that they may not want to share it. And like you said, we tend to, when we get our hands on stuff, we just tend to do the wrong things with it.
I mean, if you had something that was better, or a secret, like a secret recipe, that's not too far off. Nobody wants to share that secret recipe. It only gets shared with the family, people that they know. Why would aliens want to give us technology? Why wouldn't they want to just keep it for themselves? I don't know, man. It leads
Well,
into a bigger question. I mean, they have to be better than us, right? To think.
that's it. Yeah, that's it. That's the point. Like, I mean, maybe they wouldn't want to share, but maybe they would because I mean, we're thinking from a human's perspective. Like, they may be so far advanced and enlightened that like it's not about keeping secrets. It's not about. But who knows, man? But if you think they did want to share it, you think they would have already been down here and dropped the information off and said, have a nice life.
See you guys in 10 years when you guys kill the whole entire planet and then just walk
Yeah,
off.
yeah.
I think it's a lot like Guardians of the Galaxy 2 with Ego. I think there's some type of connection that you can get with yourself that connects down into this earth that we're living on. And somehow, like, you get fucking earth bending powers or water bending powers or some shit where it's like you find a rhythm, a spirit, like you find this ebb and flow, because I think everything has a frequency. I could tell you from taking Adderall and sitting on a Cracker Barrel, one of those wooden chairs, I found the fucking frequency to the universe. I was fucking tuned in, bro. I was like, everything's making a fucking sound right now. It's all the noise of the universe. I think it goes deeper than that. When you can truly connect down into your roots, when you can cut off all the ties and the disconnect that we've kind of built up. Like, I mean, we're very, very isolated from everything around us. Get really in touch with the roots. You find a sense of knowledge, you find a sense of worth. And I think back in the day, the reason why they were writing so much shit down and discovering all this like shit that we're kind of talking about today is because they were more in touch with the things around them. They were in touch with this earth, this system, this thing that's literally sustaining life, that we're too busy trying to focus on how to find another one rather than focus on the one that we have.
Yeah, that's valid. It's valid.
I have a
And
lot of rants.
it's all good, man. It's all good. And I think too there I mean there is a little bit of evidence I would say that that we can, you were talking about bending water and stuff, that we can manipulate our reality. that's what makes me question like what our reality is, because there's people that have written books that say that you can kind of manifest things through thought, you can bring things into your life through thought. And then there's a doctor, I wish I could remember his name. I think it's Ed. Man, I'm gonna butcher his last name. Anyway, there's a doctor out there that he is like teaching people to be able to heal themselves through thought, which is pretty intense. They hold these like these retreats, and all these people get together and they use thought form to try to heal people. And I mean, they claim that it works. I mean, I don't know, but it's just interesting.
It's
And it
kind
makes
of
you quite go
well,
ahead.
it's kind of like you ever heard of the nocebo effect?
Yes.
Oh yeah, the nocebo effect. I mean, they found autopsies of people that have been given a terminal cancer or terminal illness, and then found out the illness was benign after they do an autopsy on the body, and it's all the nocebo effect. Your body starts to experience stress and starts to shut down because it thinks all this built. That's why I say our mind's so fucking powerful. To will something into the universe is a fucking possibility.
Right. I think it is. I kind of buy into that. I think in some ways we're all kind of like mini versions of, I mean, I don't want to say gods, but in a sense, we kind of are. We can kind of be creators of our own reality. I mean, thought goes a long way, positive thought, things like that. If you really want something, I mean, if you have the right reasons and the right ideas behind it, I think that can go a long way into our physical reality, which is very strange.
The idea that you could think something up and get a bunch of people to believe it, and then it becomes real.
Well, that goes back into thought form too, right? The Native Americans
Yeah.
and some of the the creatures and the thought forms that exist. It makes you wonder if that stuff was kind of brought into existence. There was man, I'm bad with names today. I had a I had a
Jesus?
I had a pretty big psychedelic experience yesterday, and I'm sorry, my mind's kind of
Hit
I'm
me with
just
it. What was it like?
it was interesting. More just a real chill, calming effect. Just a lot of different sounds and some vision stuff, but uh, not as spiritual as I would have hoped to be. But some inner understanding of some things, just working on some self things. I mean, nothing really too amazing, but I'm a little off today. But my thought is on I forget where I was going with that. Um,
Is it anything like Miley Cyrus's acid trip where she talked about she started throwing up every single animal? Like not all the ones she's eaten, but just every single
no,
animal.
no, I had nothing weird like that.
She went
That's
vegan
strange.
after that. I was like, I'd go vegan too. That sounds horrible.
That's strange. Yeah, no, nothing too extreme like that. But the man, I had a point that I was going to get to with the thought forms.
Yeah.
Sorry, the thought forms. Um, there's a guy, damn it, I can't remember his damn name. Um, oh, Anthony Peake. He's a brilliant writer. He's done some research on a lot of this stuff, like the thought forms and stuff. And this guy claims that there's evidence that like this sanctuary or this place where these monks were able to meditate and through thought bring a little creature into existence, which I find fascinating. But then they started to see it like around the monastery or wherever the sanctuary, wherever it was that but through weeks of meditation and just thinking of this creature, they come up with this idea of like we're gonna try to will this into existence. And then the thing started showing up. People started seeing it. It kind of had a personality, like a mischievous personality. It's very strange, man. Very strange.
You have to send me that because I want to look that up. I need to look up the
Yeah,
whole
yeah.
thought thing in general because honestly, I've been thinking about that for a while. And
check out Anthony Peake's work, man. He's got a lot of great stuff. He's got a bunch of books. I've got a couple of his books, but he just check him out. Just follow what he does, and yeah, he's got some interesting take on stuff. I don't know if he's all 100% accurate, but he's got some interesting theories, and it'll make you think, man.
I can already tell this that we're gonna have multiple podcasts, Dylan. I like talking this shit. This shit's fun. Everyone always likes. I like the Bigfoot. Like I think he's more of a spirit animal or something because you got to think Native Americans all smoked and then they all fucking saw the same shit. I'm like, it's got to be a group high fucking enlightenment. This thing trying to show you, and that's the easiest thing is something that relates to something we think that we came from or we relate to, which is apes. So I'm like fucking. Plus, everyone you see video wise now of Bigfoot is off of a shitty camera. And I'm like, we have iPhone 12s in 2021. Why does it look like it's filmed off a fucking
Right,
MySpace account computer?
right, right. Yeah, I think there's something to that, like the Bigfoot and the Mothman and stuff. And I think perhaps it is a spiritual being. But I also think that it could probably somehow be both physical and spiritual at the same time because they have some evidence of footprints and stuff, but yet I mean I don't think we really have any like too much physical evidence. It's not like we go out in the woods and we find Bigfoot bodies everywhere or bones for Bigfoots, but I mean there's just too many people that have seen it, right? And there's just too much. I mean, not everybody's lying, not everybody's making it up to try to.
There's
I
no
mean,
way that everyone can have the same description and be on separate sides of the country before cell phone, before messenger bird, all that shit. I was like, there's the Yeti and Bigfoot, those two, the similarities just on different areas, I guess, where they are from. The Tibetan mountains growing up to be like, a different climate. So they're going to look a little bit different, but same kind of distinct descriptions. It's like saying fucking dinosaurs were implanted by the government here and we just think that they're these dinosaurs. They were just brain fed. It fucking freaks me out because I'm like, I don't know anymore. I'm like, I talked to a guy who behind him was a giant dinosaur statue. Like he's in a museum and there's a dinosaur. I'm like, dinosaurs real or not? And he goes, no, dinosaurs aren't real. I'm like, are you fucking lying to me or is this truth? What is it? I can't sense the sarcasm in something this serious.
that's interesting. And that makes me think of I was listening to a podcast not too long ago where they had some UFO guys on there and they were talking about how they believe that perhaps some of these abduction cases are what the person says they experienced, but they're not so sure that it's necessarily a physical experience, that it's something that actually happened here. Like, I don't know how to, I don't know if I'm making any sense, but like that they had an experience and it wasn't necessarily an illusion, but it was to them, it was as real as, can be. And it was an experience, but perhaps it was just that an experience. It wasn't something that really maybe existed. I thought that was interesting that like, I don't know.
It
What
was
are
more
your
like a
thoughts on that?
dream experience rather than like like an actual one that happened. But it's so tricky because your mind can give you false memories. Like people say, like, remember that time we went to go see Michael Jackson in concert? You're like, by the time you were old enough to go to a concert, Michael Jackson was dead. And you're like, what? But I remember this thing. I'm like, did you see that on a movie? And then you just interpret that into your own life. And then you built it up so much that now it happened this way. Like our memories get replaced and switched all the time or details added. I was hit by a jet ski going 45 miles an hour, went up me like a ramp. But when I tell people, I'm like, I did a which I did do a cartwheel off the side of, I don't really remember it though. I just remember pulling myself up on my jet ski and my body knew I was hurt before my brain did. And I don't really remember any distinct detail, but from stories I've heard of other people, I start adding to this thing and making this giant fluffed up fucking story. And it's like, no, I was fucking hit by a jet ski by a dumbass person and I was lucky to be alive. Simple as
Did
that.
how did time move slow?
When the jet ski hit me,
Yeah.
it was more like I remember looking over at some people and I turned my head and this jet ski fucking nose was like, I mean, level with my chest, but at the time I was seeing it, it was going up me like a ramp. And
Uh-huh.
I just remember shutting my eyes and gripping the handlebars. And then I felt something crush my fingers. And then I just did a cartwheel, flip into the water. And I remember pulling myself up and laying on my stomach on the seat. And then I floated to this little like island because it took 20 minutes for people to fucking get help out there. And remember standing up, and then my back felt like a slinky, and it felt like all the pressure just compressed into my back, and I just like collapsed. And then the actually most painful part was probably when they were trying to get me off on, or that sounded wrong, get me off. But the police were trying to get me back to shore. So they would hold you down, DNR would, Natural Resource Police, and they were holding my head for a spine injury. And I was like, this is more painful than me just fucking sitting. Like it's but it's protocol. And yeah, it was, time didn't really go slow. Time goes slow when I was in a fight. That is always when it goes slow, when that adrenaline starts pumping.
Yeah. I had a similar experience in a car wreck. I've been in about 5 car wrecks, but the one that the worst one I was
on. What?
The worst one I was in, I remember like when we hit the pole, like I remember seeing the glass like shatter in the one window, and I remember watching the glass like fall, dude. It was weird. It was like falling, like
a movie.
As we were like wrecking the car. It was just very strange. It was almost like as if it took a split second, but it seemed like it was 5 minutes of me watching the glass. It was very strange, very surreal. And then it was almost like an out of body experience when I finally got out of the car and realized what the hell was going on. And there was, I had a lot of people in the car, and like there was a lot of injury. There's a lot of people injured. One girl got ejected from the car. She's tore up pretty bad. And then, so I was just wondering, I don't really want to go into too many details about it because it was a pretty tragic thing, but anyway, I was just curious on the whole time thing, because it's just strange to me how time could like slow down and speed up. At least it seems that way.
Yeah. I think a lot of that happens to do with like the release of hormones and stuff like that too. Like, I mean, the adrenaline starts pumping through your body. I think mine happened just too quick, where it was like, next thing you know, it happened and then it was over with. And I was like, I didn't see any of it coming. I mean, my head just quickly turned over. The next thing I know, something just hit me and knocked me off. And I was like, it could have been a fucking bird. I've killed a seagull driving before on my jet ski.
Right.
But man, there are some instances where like somebody says something to you and it might hurt you when they say it, and that feels like it lasts forever. And you're just like, everything around you just slows the fuck down. Even when my grandma, she passed away, when I heard that news, and this was just a few weeks ago, everything stopped. The whole fucking world felt like wind. Everything just wasn't happening anymore. And I was just like, and it was like a state of like, what? And it's like that. I think it just depends on the gravity of the situation, when something hits you, depending on how it hits you, how impactful it is, and if you see it coming or not. But our brain will see shit and our body won't even know. Like, we'll be like, that just happened. It's like our brain fucking knew it was happening.
I think those type of events too, though, they tend to like stick in your memory, right? You tend to remember those and with much more vivid detail than you would like what you did yesterday type of deal. And even to the point, like, when you talk about post-traumatic stress disorder and stuff, like people that have been in battle, I mean, not only do the memories stick, but it's strange. Like when you think on the memories or when you draw upon them, like you kind of get a lot of the same feelings and like emotions back that like when you experienced it in that moment. Very strange.
Man. Dude, I have no clue on what anything is anymore. And I'm glad you feel the same way on some stuff too, man. Cause I feel like having definitive answers, like so many people are like, it's this, it's that. I'm like, you're cutting yourself off so much like curiosity, man. Like there's too much out there to say it's just this one thing.
Yeah, I think it's important to have an open mind with everything, because that's how we learn and that's how we understand things. But it's strange because the more open-minded you are and the more you learn, it seems like the more you realize you don't know shit.
That's the fun part though, because if you look at me like 10 years ago, I would have been like, I know this, I know that, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. And now I'm like, I have no fucking clue. I am along for the ride and I'm praying to God I don't get thrown off.
Right.
Well, Dylan, you given me enough of your time, man. Where can people find your podcast at?
Well, you can check me out on any of the podcast apps. I'm on YouTube. Check me out on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast. You can check me out on my website. It's www.insearchofrealitypodcast.com. Yeah, check me out, man. It's called In Search of Reality. I interview a lot of different people. We have a bunch of different topics. We've had some psychedelic experts on. We've had psychic mediums, past life regressionists. It's a lot of it has to do with the afterlife, or kind of why we're here, trying to figure out what the hell's going on with our reality and what is our purpose. That's kind of the goal of things.
I'll make sure I link it all in the description. And thanks for listening to this episode of Out of the Blank Podcast.